The scissors whispered with each snip, silver strands falling in fragile arcs to the cracked tiles. The old salon smelled of scorched oils and cheap chemicals, a cloying scent that clung to Larai Nisavan's throat. Her reflection in the cloudy mirror was almost unrecognizable, half of her head already bare, the pale blue of her skin gleaming under the angry red light of Praxis 4's twin suns. The remaining hair still spilled over her shoulder, molten moonlight made solid, but it would be gone soon enough. The ceremonial wig, woven with centuran silk and blessed threads, awaited its foundation. Grell, the barber, worked with a quiet patience that made the moment more unbearable. His gnarled fingers moved with the precision of decades, though his voice was little more than a gravelly murmur. "Hold still, child. The preparation must be proper." Larai bit her lip, hard enough to taste copper. The title he used, child, burned in her chest. She was 22, and yet here she sat, trembling like a cornered girl. Her father had bartered her future for the erasure of his debts, selling her to Magistrate Thorn, a man whose reptilian eyes had lingered on her since she was 16. 3 wives before her had not survived him. The thought made her stomach twist. Her gaze returned to the mirror. The glow in her skin betrayed her emotions, faint threads of bioluminescence flickering at her temples and along the newly exposed scalp. She pressed her palms into her lap, willing herself still, willing herself quiet. Obedience was survival. She had repeated that truth her whole life. Obedience to her father, to custom, to a society that valued her only as a bargaining chip. "Your father was fortunate," Grell said, his voice thick with the resignation of the old. "Magistrate Thorn spares no expense. The wig will be beautiful." Larry's throat tightened. Beautiful. Property dressed in silk and jewels. An ornament for an old predator's arm. The bitterness slipped out in a sharp whisper. "I don't care about the damn wig." The scissors stilled for a moment. Grell's weathered eyes softened, but he did not answer. The sound of the blades resumed, metallic and steady, cutting away pieces of her dignity. Her gaze drifted toward the window. Between streaks of grime, she caught the shimmer of movement beyond the glass. A vehicle slid into view, unlike the battered mining haulers that coughed smoke along Menar streets. This one hummed, sleek and silent, its metal shell unmarked and its windows black with tint. The engine's sound was different too, refined, powerful, foreign. Larai leaned forward instinctively, her pulse quickening. Beside the vehicle stood a human man, scrolling through a device, his figure solid and unhurried. Humans were rare here, rarer still in Menar's backstreets. He looked utterly out of place, and therefore impossibly free. Something deep inside her cracked. The weight of years of silence, of swallowing anger, of bowing beneath her father's bargains and her culture's expectations, shifted. For the first time, she imagined not what she owed, but what she wanted. "I need the refresher," she said abruptly, rising on legs that felt foreign beneath her. Grell frowned, but nodded. "Quickly, child. We must finish before the sun's dip." Larai moved through the dim interior, past dusty shelves stacked with jars of outdated dyes and curling fashion holoscreens. The air grew hotter toward the back, a dry heat pressing through the thin walls. She did not stop at the refresher door. Instead, she pressed her hand against the handle of the rear exit. For a breathless instant, fear clawed at her chest, fear of her father's wrath, of Thorn's gaze, of what awaited her if she stayed. Then she pushed. The door swung open, and the heat of the alley hit like a furnace. She didn't care. Her bare feet struck the pavement, the twin suns searing her skin, but she was already moving. Half bald, half radiant, tears streaking her cheeks, Larai Nisavan ran. She did not look back. Not at Grell, not at the salon, not at the life she was supposed to endure. Her eyes fixed ahead, toward the labyrinth of alleys that led to the spaceport district and toward the stranger with the unmarked taxi. Something told her he would be her chance, perhaps her only one. And Larai, for the first time, chose chance over chains. The streets of Minar stank of iron dust and exhaust, the air thick enough to scratch her lungs. Larai darted through narrow alleys, the slap of her bare feet echoing off crumbling walls. She knew these passages from childhood dares, but tonight they felt like veins pulsing with danger. Every turn, every shadow seemed alive with the threat of discovery. Her heart thundered as she burst into the wider plaza near the spaceport. The crowd here was looser, made up of traders and dockhands, their clothes stained with ore and fuel. For once, her appearance might not be the strangest thing in sight. Still, the half-shaven head and the glowing lines etched across her blue skin drew a few glances. She lowered her chin, trying to shrink inside her coarse dress. There, at the refueling station, the sleek transport shimmered beneath the crimson suns, gleaming where all else looked rusted and tired. The human leaned against it, scrolling his device with an expression caught between boredom and quiet amusement. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his jacket worn but clean, his boots scuffed with honest travel. His chestnut hair was tousled, and when he shifted, his eyes caught the light-worn brown, sharper than they first appeared. Larai slowed, breath rasping, every nerve screaming at her to keep moving, to reach him, to beg. Yet doubt clawed at her. What if he turned her away? What if he handed her back for a bribe? Humans were rare on Praxis 4, but not beyond the lure of coin. The decision was ripped from her when shouts split the air. She turned to see two of Thorne's enforcers cutting through the crowd, red uniforms flashing like a curse. They showed her image on a projection plate, questioning anyone in reach. People backed away uneasily, unwilling to cross the magistrate's men. Panic surged. She spun back toward the human, and their eyes met. His brows lifted, first in surprise at her disheveled state, then narrowing at the sight of the guards behind her. "Please," she gasped, stumbling toward him. "I need help." For an instant, silence hung between them, broken only by the hiss of fuel lines and the distant roar of engines. Then the man straightened, his voice calm, carrying a subtle edge of command. "Looks like you're in some trouble." His gaze flicked past her, measuring the distance of the approaching guards. "What are they after you for?" Laray's throat closed, but she forced the words out. "They want to force me into marriage with a man who killed 3 wives." Her voice cracked, raw with terror. "Please, I just need to get away." Something shifted in the human's expression. The faint irony in his eyes hardened into resolve. He pulled open the passenger door with a smooth motion. "Don't worry. I'll get you out of here." Her breath hitched. Stepping inside meant leaving everything, her family, her world, her place in tradition behind. She hovered at the threshold, trembling. "You really want to help me?" He smiled faintly, a curve of the lips that carried no mockery, only reassurance. "I'm not in the habit of delivering unwilling brides to executioners." "Get in." The guards spotted her then, their shouts rising above the crowd. The projection plate flickered with her image, proof of the hunt closing in. Larai lunged into the seat, the door slamming behind her as the human circled to the driver's side. He slid in with practiced ease, flicked a sequence on the controls, and the vehicle lifted, hovering on a low hum. Engines roared as he guided the sleek transport into the stream of traffic. The crowd behind blurred. Thorne's men pushed after them, waiting for other vehicles to stop, but it was too late. "Name's David?" the human said, his tone steady as his hands coaxed the machine faster. "David Mays." Larai clutched the seatbelt across her chest, breath shuddering. Larai Nesoven. Hold tight. Larai Nesoven," David murmured as the transport surged forward, red light flashing off the windshield. Looks like we've got company. She risked a glance at the rear display. 2 security vehicles were in pursuit, their crimson lights slicing through the dust. The sight stole her breath, but in the same moment, she felt something stir beneath the panic, a pulse of hope. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to stand between her and the chains waiting to close. And for the first time, Lowry felt like she might have a chance to outrun them. The taxi bucked as David pushed the thrusters harder than any civilian vehicle had a right to endure. Dust plumed behind them, streaking the horizon in red and gold under the twin suns. The hum of the engine deepened to a growl, every vibration rattling through Larry's bones. She clutched the armrest, half from fear, half from disbelief that she was here at all inside a human's transport, fleeing across the Badlands with her soul marks pulsing like fireflies under her skin. On the rear display, 2 of Thorne's pursuit craft clung stubbornly to their trail. Sleeker than the magistrate's usual patrols, they cut across the desert with ruthless speed. David's eyes flicked between mirrors and sensors, jaw set in calm concentration. He seemed utterly unshaken, like this was routine. "They're gaining," Larry whispered. "I see them." His voice was steady, almost casual. "Don't worry. This old girl's got a few surprises." His fingers danced across the control pad, and with a low whine, the taxi jolted forward, a hidden booster roaring to life. The acceleration pinned Larry back in her seat, her silver hair whipping around her face. She clutched the seatbelt. "You're not just a taxi driver, are you?" A smile ghosted across his lips. "Depends who's asking." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Behind them, one of the pursuing craft loosed a warning shot, the plasma bolt slamming into the ground and throwing up a geyser of molten dust. The vehicle lurched under the shockwave, but David corrected instantly, weaving between jagged rock spires like he'd done it 100 times. Then her cum device chimed. The shrill sound almost made her cry out. She fumbled for it, dread prickling her spine. If it was Thorne. The screen flared alive. Not Thorne. Not her father. Her mother's face appeared, instead Aleliona Nesovin, eyes sharp with fear and determination. "Lay, thank the stars," Aleliona breathed. "Are you with the human?" Laurai blinked. "Mother, how—" "There's no time." Aleliona's voice cut sharp. "I've been preparing this for months. David Mays, you're clear to take her to the coordinates I'm transmitting. There are documents, credits, everything she'll need for a new life." David didn't even glance at the comm, but Laurai saw his navigation display light up with new markers. He adjusted their course smoothly. No hesitation. Larry's throat tightened. "Mother, you arranged this?" Eleliona's expression softened, just for a moment. "If I'd told you, you might have revealed something to Thorne's spies. You had to be genuine. I couldn't risk it." Another plasma bolt seared past, close enough to rattle the shields. David's hands remained firm on the controls. "We'll be there in 40 minutes if we shake the tail," he muttered. "You will," Eleliona said with conviction. "David comes highly recommended. He's done this before." Larry's eyes darted to him, catching his profile against the glow of the console. His jawline was taut, his gaze locked on the horizon, every line of him steady. Something inside her fluttered. "Mother," she whispered. "Why?" "You always upheld the traditions. You married father the same way, and regretted it every day since." Aleliona cut in, her tone suddenly bitter. "Your father was kind once, but desperation changed him. I will not let you be chained to a monster like Thorne." A harsh tone cut through the cabin, an alert from the sensor array. The pursuers had called for reinforcements. A third blip now appeared on the rear display. David's voice was calm, but firmer now. "Mrs. Nesovin, we'll contact you when we reach the coordinates." "Hold tight," "Be safe, both of you," her mother said, then cut the channel. For a long moment, the only sound was the thrum of the engine and the rush of air past the hull. Lare's skin glowed faintly, her soul marks betraying the storm inside her. She pressed her palms together, trembling. David risked a quick glance at her. "Your mother must care for you very much." "I never knew," Lare whispered. "She always seemed resigned." "Like me. Sometimes people hide what they believe to protect the ones they love," David said quietly. His gaze met hers for the briefest instant, and something in that look made her glow brighter still. Behind them, the pursuit craft closed in again, dust trails rising like angry ghosts. Ahead, the canyons loomed jagged shadows carved by rivers long dead. David adjusted course. "We'll lose them in there. Hold tight." The taxi angled toward the maze of stone, engines screaming, while Lare's pulse raced with fear, revelation, and something dangerously close to hope. The canyon swallowed them whole. Rust-red walls soared high on either side, their jagged ridges cutting the sky into narrow ribbons of burning light. The taxi's engines echoed through the labyrinth like the growl of some cornered beast. David guided the craft with practiced precision, banking hard to avoid crumbling arches and sudden drops. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles hesitated at the canyon mouth before plunging in after, their lights flaring against the rock like hunting eyes. Lare clutched the seat's edge, her soul marks pulsing faintly in rhythm with her pounding heart. Every twist of the canyon brought them close to scraping stone. Every jolt reminded her that the men chasing them would drag her back into chains if they failed. But David never faltered. His hands moved with ease, coaxing more out of the battered taxi than seemed possible. "They won't stay confused long," Lare said, her voice tight. David's mouth twitched in something that was almost a smile. "That's why we're not stopping here." He flicked a switch, and the display lit up with a new marker. "Your mother's coordinates put us close." An old mining outpost in the canyon system. Abandoned, but should be defensible. Minutes later, the canyon widened into a pocket valley. Nestled against the rock face were a cluster of structures. Prefab walls long rusted, roofs half collapsed under centuries of dust. Vegetation clung stubbornly to the edges, glowing faintly where bioluminescent lichen vines crept up broken walls. David killed the engine and guided the taxi behind a large storage silo, its bulk hiding them from aerial sight. For the first time since fleeing the salon, silence fell. David scanned the sensors, then nodded. Clear for now. He slid out of his seat and checked the pulse pistol concealed in his jacket before holstering it again. "Stay close." Lare followed him inside the outpost's main structure. The air was cooler within, heavy with dust but stable. Ancient consoles lined the walls, their screens dark. A faded mural stretched across one wall, depicting miners hauling glowing ore from canyon veins, faces proud despite grime. She traced the mural with her fingertips. "My grandfather was a miner here. He died when a shaft collapsed. That's when our family's fortunes began to fade." Her voice cracked on the last word, and her glow dimmed. David studied the mural beside her, then said softly, "Is that why your father traded you to Thorn? To claw back what was lost?" Lare swallowed. "Or maybe he just stopped hoping for anything better." Her gaze lifted to David. "Humans don't do this, do they? Arrange marriages like contracts?" He leaned against the console, crossing his arms. "Not usually. Families sometimes try to influence, but most of us believe in choosing partners ourselves. For attraction, values, respect. Ideally, love." The word lingered in the air like a forbidden song. Lare repeated it quietly, as though tasting it for the first time. Love. Her marks glimmered faintly, soft and uncertain. David stepped closer. "And what do you believe?" Her throat tightened, but she met his eyes. "I think I'm beginning to understand." The distance between them shrank, the silence deepening into something charged. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to retreat. She didn't. His fingers brushed the bare side of her head, tracing the glowing lines of her soul marks. The touch sent a shiver through her that was more than physical, a resonance thrumming in her chest. "These are beautiful," he murmured. "Do they mean something?" "They're called soul marks, unique to each person. Once only a spouse was allowed to see them." Her voice was unsteady, almost breaking. "Showing you like this? It could have been a death sentence." His smile was faint, but steady. "I've never been good at following rules that don't make sense." Before Larai could answer, a faint hum vibrated through the floor. David stiffened, moving to check the perimeter sensors he'd set on the taxi. His jaw tightened. "They're still sweeping the canyon." "Not close yet, but looking." Larai joined him, watching the flickering display. The blips of their pursuers crept steadily through branching corridors. It might take hours for them to stumble onto this valley. Or minutes. She exhaled, forcing calm into her voice. "There's an old bunker nearby. I saw it once when I was a child, hidden deeper in the canyons. It might still be intact." David glanced at her, weighing her words. Then he nodded. "Show me." Together, they left the hollow comfort of the abandoned outpost and moved toward the darker throat of the canyon, the faint glow of lichen vines, their only light. Behind them, the silence of the valley seemed to shiver, as if the stones themselves were listening. Ahead, hidden beyond shadow and dust, secrets waited secrets that would explain why Thorn pursued her with such relentless hunger, and why her mother had risked everything to free her. Cora City rose from the horizon like a mirage, its spires catching the twin suns in hues of orange and rose. Ancient stone arches intertwined with steel towers, the weight of tradition and the gleam of commerce welded into one sprawling labyrinth. The closer David steered the taxi, the heavier the air seemed, not from dust, but from the press of watchful eyes and unseen rules. Larai sat stiff in the passenger seat, her new disguise clinging to her like a second skin. The shimmering fabric bared far more of her than she would ever have chosen, meant to flaunt curves and marks rather than hide them. In her chest, anger warred with shame. She had fled one form of objectification, only to put on another, though this time it was armor of a different kind. David hadn't said much since she stepped out of the changing alcove. His ears had flushed red, his gaze snapping politely away, but the tension in his jaw betrayed how much the charade grated at him. Now he played the part of a wealthy trader, jacket adjusted sharp, posture loose with a calculated arrogance dot. As they approached the outer checkpoint, the hum of traffic grew restless. Dozens of transports queued in inspection lanes. Guards in crimson uniforms patrolled between them, their reptilian eyes sharp with suspicion. Laray's stomach churned. At least half bore Thorn's crest, not the standard city insignia. "Eyes down," David murmured, his voice pitched low but steady. "Let me do the talking." She obeyed, tilting her chin just enough to expose her glowing soul marks, the way a purchased companion might, decorative, submissive. The humiliation burned her throat, but she held to the role. A guard stepped forward, data slate in hand. Identification and purpose of visit. His eyes flicked from David to Larai, narrowing. David passed over a chip with practiced ease. Doreus Vega, independent trader, Earthborn, passing through to Nexus Station. Shipment of luxury goods waiting to connect. His voice carried the kind of confidence only years of deception could forge. The guard slotted the chip into his scanner, eyes narrowing at the scrolling data. "And the female?" David's hand settled on Larry's shoulder. To the watching eyes, it was possessive. To her, it was grounding. "Recent acquisition," he said casually. "Picked her up cheap in Manar. Unfinished, but serviceable enough. Larai forced herself not to flinch at the words. The glow beneath her skin pulsed erratically, panic building. If the scanner reached her, it would strip away every falsehood. The guard's gaze lingered. He tapped a command, and the scanner chirped. "Step out. Both of you." Verification required. Larry's pulse spiked. "They'll know. They'll see me for who I am." Her glow brightened, uncontrollable. She felt the resonance building inside, energy clawing for release. "Focus on me," David whispered, barely audible as he guided her out of the vehicle. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, warm and steady. To others, it looked like ownership. To her, it was lifeline. The guard led them toward a squat scanning booth. The device whined, its lens sliding open like an eye. Laray's breath came shallow, her panic rising. "I can't hide this." But then David's gaze caught hers. Brown eyes, steady and unflinching. "You're fine," he said, his voice just for her. "You're not alone. Breathe with me." Something shifted. The energy coiled inside her flowed outward, not wild but focused. She felt her marks respond, pulsing in time with his voice, his touch. The scanner flickered, stuttered, then beeped once. A generic Praxian profile flashed on the guard's slate, bland and unremarkable. The guard frowned, but found nothing to hold. "Proceed." David inclined his head with a smirk that dared argument. Much appreciated. He steered Larai back toward the taxi with measured calm, his hand still firm at her back. Only when the checkpoint gates swallowed them into the city did Larai dare to breathe. Her knees trembled, her glow dimming back to normal. "I thought they would see me." "I thought you controlled it," David interrupted softly. "You bent it to your will." He glanced at her, something more than admiration in his eyes. "You're stronger than you think." Heat flushed through her, not just from fear, but from the way his voice wrapped around her name like a vow. Later, in the hush of a lodging house deep within the trader's district, the mask of ownership fell away. The room was simple: one bed, one refresher, walls thin as paper but safe. When the door sealed behind them, the silence pressed close. "You were brilliant back there," David said. His hands were steady, but his voice was rougher now, stripped of performance. "I couldn't have pulled it off without you." Larai moved closer, her pulse quickening. "Your presence grounds me. Without it, I can't control the glow." Their eyes locked, and the tension that had grown between them since the canyon crystallized. Neither disguise nor danger could smother it any more. Larai lifted her hand, resting trembling fingers against his chest. He covered them with his own, strong and warm. For the first time, her soul marks didn't feel like a curse. They blazed bright, lighting the dim room in soft blue. When David leaned in, his lips brushing hers with the careful reverence of a man crossing a threshold, Larai knew it wasn't part of the act, wasn't pretense or disguise. It was choice. Her choice. And it set both of their paths on fire. Nexa Station loomed like a steel crown against the darkness of space, its tiers glittering with the lights of hundreds of ships docking and departing. To Larai, it was both awe and dread made manifest. Within those shining halls lay her escape to the human sectors, and thorns inevitable. Trapped. David guided the taxi into the stream of traffic, his posture taut beneath the practiced calm. "Dock 17, he said, eyes flicking to the forged pass in his palm. "Once we're through, we board, and you're free. Free." The word tasted dangerous. Laray's soul marks pulsed softly beneath her skin as she stared out the window. Twin suns now just faint embers behind the planet's curve. But freedom was not something she trusted. Not yet. In the concourse, the tide of species pressed around them, traders barking deals, children tugging at parents, guards scanning the flow with predator eyes. David moved with the swagger of a man who belonged, his hand firm at the small of her back, guiding her through the chaos. To others, it was possession. To her, it was shield. Then Larai froze. Near the security arch stood a figure she knew too well. Her father. Joran Nasavin's face was drawn and gray, his eyes darting through the crowd until they landed on her. He started forward, lips shaping her name. David tensed, hand brushing his concealed pistol. "Could be a trap," he murmured. Joran's hands lifted empty, trembling. His voice cracked with desperation. "Lay, please listen to me." Larry's heart twisted. Betrayal still burned. He had sold her future as casually as a miner might sell ore. Yet the sorrow in his eyes was raw, undeniable. She hesitated, then stepped half a pace forward. "You gave me to Thorn," she whispered. His shoulders sagged. "He threatened to kill your mother." "I thought she was still planetside." I had no choice." His voice broke, and he pressed a data chip into her hand. This is proof. What Thorn's been doing. Experiments on women like you. Take it to the Confederation." David studied Joran's face, suspicion taut in his jaw. But Larai felt it through the strange new thrum of her resonance. Truth, regret, the hollow ache of a man too long broken. "He's telling the truth," she murmured. Before David could answer, a shadow fell across them. The concourse stilled like prey, sensing a predator. Magistrate Thorn himself strode through the crowd, flanked by armored guards. His reptilian gaze locked onto Larai, lips curling in cruel satisfaction. "You thought you could flee me?" His voice cut like steel. "Your father signed the contract. By Praxian law, you are mine." Larai's glow flared bright, anger flooding her veins. "I am no one's property." Thorn's hand lifted, signaling his men. "Kill the human. Take the girl alive." Blasters leveled. David shoved Larai behind him, his pulse pistol snapping free. The concourse erupted in chaos as travelers screamed and scattered. Shots seared the air, crackling against metal beams. David fired back, dropping one guard, then another, but Thorn advanced, his own weapon drawn. Larry's panic surged into power. Her marks ignited, casting light across the station. The resonance leapt from her like a storm. Guards staggered, clutching their heads, weapons clattering to the floor. Even Thorn faltered, snarling as if resisting an invisible tide. "You wanted power?" Larai's voice shook the air, deeper than her own. "Then feel it." Thorn buckled, knees trembling under the force of her will. But the strain ripped through her vision blurring, chest burning, control slipping. David's hand caught hers, grounding, steady. His voice cut through the chaos. "Lay, you're not alone. Hold on to me." She anchored herself in him, the connection snapping taut, resonance flowing clean instead of wild. Together they held Thorn pinned until a new voice rang out. "Magistrate Thorn?" A squad of Confederation officers surged through the smoke, weapons trained. "You are under arrest for crimes against sentient life and violations of genetic protocols." Thorn roared, thrashing, but Lauray's grip and David's aim kept him trapped until the officers swarmed him, snapping restraints across his scaled wrists. His threats echoed down the concourse as he was dragged away. Larai swayed, spent, but David caught her against his chest. His arms were iron, his voice rough with relief. "You did it. You stopped him." She clutched the data chip to her chest, trembling, and whispered the truth that mattered more than any law or treaty. "We stopped him." In that moment, amidst smoke and shouts and the stunned stares of strangers, Larai knew the bond between them was no accident of escape. It was choice. It was strength. And it had just changed the fate of Praxis-4.3 months later. Praxis 4 hung below the viewport like a wound in the stars. Its rust-colored surface, bore the scars of mines and warping climate. Yet in the orbiting Confederation outpost, a fragile new future was beginning to stir. Lara stood alone at first, her reflection superimposed over the planet's curve, short silver hair brushing her cheeks. She had chosen to keep it trimmed, her soul marks visible now in open defiance of the traditions that once demanded they be hidden. Their glow was calm, steady, no longer shame, no longer fear. A chime sounded, and the holoscreen lit with her mother's face. Leona's eyes were tired but fierce. "The reforms are taking root," she reported. Thorne's conviction shattered many illusions. Already, families are questioning the old contracts. Your father? He has become a voice in the councils, calling for change. Larry's throat tightened. Father? He has much to atone for, Leona admitted, but his guilt fuels his resolve. Sometimes the weakest turn strongest when given a second chance. Her gaze softened. And you, daughter? Any regrets? Larai smiled faintly. Only that it took me so long to run. The call ended, and the silence left behind felt lighter than it once would have. A pair of footsteps crossed the deck. Warm hands slid around her waist, steady and familiar. David's voice brushed her ear. She believes in him, doesn't she? Larai leaned back against him, letting the human's solid warmth anchor her. For the first time, I think I do too, David chuckled softly. Never thought I'd see the day a taxi job turned into interplanetary reform. She turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. His eyes, that steady brown that had steadied her in canyons and checkpoints alike, carried no pretense now. No disguise, no swagger. Just honesty. I thought you were just chance, Larry whispered. An accident in the spaceport. But you were my choice. David brushed a hand over her glowing marks, reverent as if touching constellations. And you were mine. Not because of the mission. Not because of what you can do. But because of who you are. The station lights dimmed slightly as a ship launched from the docks below, streaking toward the stars. Larai followed its trail until it vanished into the void. Once, the sight would have filled her with envy, a longing to escape. Now it filled her with anticipation. What now? She asked softly. David's smile curved slow, certain. Now we see where this goes. The Confederation needs someone who understands Praxis 4, someone who can speak for change. And well, I could use a partner who keeps me from getting shot. Her laughter, light and unguarded, echoed in the observation deck. She pressed her forehead to his, their breath mingling. Her soul marks glowed brighter, not from fear or strain, but from contentment below them. The world of her birth turned beneath twin suns, still battered, still struggling, but no longer a cage. Larry had fled as a half-shorn bride, tears on her face and chains at her back. Now she stood as her own, cherished and chosen, walking a path with a man who saw her not as property or burden, but as equal. And as David's lips brushed hers, as their minds brushed too in that strange resonance that had once frightened her, she knew with bone-deep certainty. She was free, not because she had run, because she had chosen.